You are now officially rocking with the best. David Goss and Tommy Scoops with you for another Soccer Wise live here on Thursday afternoon. Anywhere you get your podcast, whenever you want. But if you are watching, you see an extra backwards hat on screen. The Athletics' own Jeff Rueter, who is coming to save us. There was the potential this show was going to be 30 minutes of me reading Jeff's articles about previewing the Club World Cup live, and instead, Jeff's going to do it himself.
Yeah, I've just got them all in front of me. We're gonna do like a shipyard documentation of everything I've written so far, just in the most monotonous.
Hear thee. We now have the presentation. It is. We don't know what this tournament's gonna be. It's gonna be a weird one. It's a weird week in soccer, Tom. As we got together to be like, oh, let's prepare. We recorded a little video that's gonna come out in a bit. Previously, it is the 1 year anniversary of the launch of Soccer Wise. So thank you to everyone who watches and listens. Jeff, thank you for all of the work.
Did he just pat his heart?
Yeah. My one appearance in my my one live show after a US game, you bet.
It's kept us alive. That was the super sub performances we needed at this
I was
time.
brought in the 93rd to ice the game. That's what's happening. I respect it. It's fine. It's good.
Absolutely not. This was an 85th minute. Let's see if we can get an extra set piece and get him in the box.
We gave you 8 more minutes than that, Jeff.
Jeff was like, yeah, thanks, bro. That was more hurtful than if you just said, yeah, good point, Jeff.
Tom, to be honest, I've never really been in a professional locker room, unlike you, who's clearly an athlete.
Got some sand and topsoil dropped off. I'm a homeowner, no big deal. Just a blue collar guy who gets my shovel and my wheelbarrow. The guy drops it off and he goes, "Dude, let me tell you, are you an athlete? You play baseball? Dude, you look like an athlete." And I was just like, "Oh, stop it."
Who, me? Little old me? No chance.
Say more.
We do have Tom's pictures in his Darcy's Tavern baseball jerseys where
with Viper shades, like I look like an outfielder.
Yeah, do you paint your cheeks? I paint all of it. Nah, okay. Right.
His dream is to be a washed out 1962 Dodgers
middle reliever
league baseball player.
Middle reliever.
Yeah. Yes.
And he's as close as he's ever been right now, and he's no further. So we have a lot to talk about on this show. We're going to get into the Club World Cup. 3 MLS teams in 3 different groups are going to kick off. And then we're going to cook on our favorite players from Ulsan and Auckland City and, Ahali and everywhere else in between. We've got some transfers. There's a ringer that's been brought in by LAFC. This is classic youth soccer of like, oh, we're going to this tournament. Why don't you come join us? Like, see if you like it. See if you're part of the crew. So they've done that. We have some MLS news to get into. We'll probably talk about the schedule a lot because that's something that everyone really enjoys and has never been discussed. We have a weekend of games coming up. So besides the Club World Cup teams, there's a Thursday night game. NYCFC plays Atlanta because why not? We won't talk about that because that's coming up pretty soon. There's a Friday night game. The Portland Timbers play. We've got some news around them to talk about. And then there's a bunch of other games as well. And we will touch on the U.S. men's national team, if anyone's heard of them. They will be playing soccer as well right now, which we will discuss. But first, Tom, you have anything to open the show up with for us?
I got some breaking news for you, David Goss. Are you ready?
Yeah, let me steel myself.
New York Red Bulls 2 are hiring U.S. national team legend Michael Bradley to be the club's head coach. This is the first head coaching job in Michael Bradley's coaching career, which is nice, a little poetic. This is where he started his playing career back when they were the Metro Stars. And now he starts his head coaching career with Red Bulls 2. Red Bull Global have already begun integrating him, and they see him as a really top young coaching talent that they want to have in their system and help him develop and grow.
Wow.
Interesting. I mean, some poetry there, too, where Bob Bradley gives Jesse Marsch his kind of entry point into it. Michael begins with some assistant roles under Bob with Stabæk, and then also, a guest spot with Canada this month. Like, yeah, you're building a tree. I don't know. Does that still count as the Bob Bradley tree, or are we on to the Jesse Marsch tree at this point?
Well, Michael Bradley, I feel like kind of has to go to the Bob Bradley tree,
right?
But like you can go all the way back up, and you're just gonna get to Bruce Arena no matter how high you go. But so yeah, like Jeff, that's a good point too. What I was told at the end of Michael's playing career was that I forget if Jesse was still at Leeds or not at this point, or if he was deciding at his next job. So many people I talked to was like, wherever Jesse goes, Michael is going to be his assistant. That is going to be his first coaching job. And then there's a little bit of a delay with Jesse getting the job. Like, Jesse thought he was getting the national team job. Like, it's not new news. We've talked about it. He thought he was getting the U.S. national team job. So I very safely assumed that's where Michael was going to go. That didn't happen. And then Bob Bradley, kind of out of nowhere, took the Staubach job again. And Michael went and was an assistant for him. And then, like you said, Jeff, he's been working with Canada under Jesse Marsh this international window. And, like, I'm glad that they two got to work together, because when Jesse was playing, Michael was going to training sessions when he was whatever 14, 15 in those Chicago teams that of incredible lore. And you look around, there's just, I don't know, like 12 coaches from those teams. So he's had a good educational soccer upbringing.
Bob coached, obviously, the Metro Stars at the time for a very short amount of time, and coached Princeton forever, which I think he considers himself New Jersey soccer. Manny Shellshite from Seton Hall and everything else. So I think there's some poetic connection there. And I will say, for Michael and Jesse to bring one of the most American attributes to Canada, which is inventing a tournament, winning it immediately, and claiming yourself Canadian Shield winners while making the trophy a cup, not a shield. God bless the United States of America. So congratulations to the Canadian national team. It was a cool setup for them. Ukraine and Ivory Coast, two tough teams. Like, this is what Canada hasn't done enough of. And they set it up in a way in which then they didn't have to play New Zealand, which is also pretty smart of like, yeah, they'll come, but like, we're not going to spend time playing them. That's not a part of what we do, but you guys can. You guys should do that. And they won. They were victorious. So Jesse Marsh riding into the Gold Cup on a high, and Michael Bradley taking over. So the dominoes here that no one cares about, but I'm going to say is Ibisevic stepped away as an assistant manager. Ibrahim Sakaya, who's been around the Red Bulls, for almost his entire life. He was a Salzburg player, came to Red Bulls as a player, has coached now. He moves in as an assistant, and that's where the opening comes for Michael Bradley. And it seems like a pretty big push in MLS Next Pro as we see, other really young coaches coming off the field stepping on. But I think a chance to get people into your pipeline and into your system. It's interesting because I wouldn't call what Bob did Red Bull soccer. So it'll be fascinating to see where Michael falls on that spectrum and how he connects to all of it. But it's definitely going to make Red Bulls 2 more mention than it did yesterday or any other time since Tom Starlow carried the crest alongside Brian White playing in front of Jared Stroud.
With David Goss on the microphone.
Oh, to the best of days, man. Yeah. I would have loved those offside of MSU Soccer Park interviews.
Say at Montclair State
12
University.
Minutes before a game with Michael Bradley. That would have been a vibe. So I am jealous of whoever gets the opportunity to do that. That takes us into our national team conversation now, where the current captain of the USMNT, I think he is, right? Christian Pulisic is the captain of the national team.
Tim Ream's worn the armband more under Pochettino than Pulisic has. So
and
that's always been a weird thing to me.
At the World Cup, it was like 4 captains, right? It was like
and then they just let everybody had the armband. That's right.
The blame for this falls on Jimmy Conrad, because Jimmy Conrad opened up the interview that he, Charlie Davies, and Tony Miola, all friends of the show, did with Christian Pulisic a few hours ago, really, today, in which he got an opportunity to sort of respond to a lot of the comments that have been coming his way of not playing this summer. Obviously, we talked a bit about Landon's comments on the show on Tuesday. I would be excited to never talk about it again in my life. And yet, here we are once again, Tom.
Yeah, I'll just read out the quotes, and Jeff, you go take it in whatever direction you want. But here are some of the biggest ones. And then first of all, actually, shout out to CBS Sports Galazzo, to Miola, to Conrad, to Davies. That was good. And they got Christian to speak, and they didn't just toss like softballs. Like they did push him on a few things, which again, I think that was really good. So some of the biggest quotes that come out of this quote: "To question my commitment, especially towards the national team, and that, in my opinion, that is way out of line." Another quote: "I didn't think it would become what it has become when asked about this level of controversy." And probably the biggest one is that Christian says, quote, "I did want to be part of at least the 2 friendlies, but they said no. I had to make the best decision for myself and in the long run for my team." And in so many words, there's no injury. This was a physical and mental break. He didn't want to potentially play 8 more games and then roll right into AC Milan preseason, which will then, at the end of this European season, will roll right into the World Cup. So Pulisic wanted that break, and he wanted to play these 2 friendlies, but that was it. And for me, like, I would have said no. I think if I was Pochettino too. But Jeff, any of those quotes, which way do you want to go?
Yeah, I think that just the general "I wanted to be there for the friendlies" is very interesting.
Oh my!
Because it's just like, You start training next week. Like later in the interview, he says with Milan, I'm ready to start in a couple of days. It's just like, so you wouldn't have had any break. So why did you want the friendlies? You wanted to play against Turkey and Switzerland. You didn't want to play against, European nations, whatever, guys that you come up against in Serie A. You didn't want to play against, your group draw. It's just very an interesting look.
But is that totally wrong? Because I'm seeing a lot of reactions to this, and here's my thought. You come off the season. He can't skip the friendlies and go to the Gold Cup. That's not an option, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So this is the only one. They're two high-level games. They're close together. You come into camp, you play them, and then you leave. To me, that part isn't as crazy. And if Pochettino's saying, well, I want the whole group together, then that goal is to win the Gold Cup. Because having the whole group together is like, Christian Pulisic is going to be on the World Cup roster. So if your goal is to build the best national team, like having him for some time seems more valuable than none. And that part, I think, is a little fascinating in like the decision-making above him that it played out that way.
Yeah, and we got a little more insight into how those decisions are made from Pulisic in this interview, where he also talks about how he had exactly one phone call with Pochettino after the season where they talked about, do you want to be on this tournament? And he's like, no, but I'll do the friendlies. And they're like, no, we want one team. Click, hang up. And also says, like, I've had a lot of coaches in my short career. You know how the sport goes. I've learned throughout this time every coach is different. I've had coaches who have communicated with me daily, who want to talk and get things off their brain, talk to their players, experience that with the national team too. He's not that type of guy, basically. He's a quiet guy. I'm a quiet guy. Neither of us are going to reach out to each other. We need kind of a third party to bring us together, introvert behavior, that sort of thing. So I don't know. I don't love how that feels, though, going into this when Pochettino is still trying to figure out so much about his squad and so much about his lineup, about how he's going to get this team ready. If he's not regularly talking to his star players, like that seems kind of like the most important part of the job between windows of an international manager is scouting and staying in touch with your core.
I would agree with that. This aligns with what I've heard. I would have been surprised if Pulisic and Pochettino talked a whole lot. When I've heard, they're not super close. Haven't heard a ton of positives in that relationship. Again, and that can be fine. I don't want to either get this aggregated or make it sound out of context. Like they're not super close, and I think I'll just leave it at that without further reporting. I'm looking forward to Paul Tenorio breaking it open and doing a real job on that one. But that's where I'll leave it for now.
The capital J's to start working later on in the day after the amateurs like us have already talked about everything and made stuff up. That was some of the big quotes in there.
Sorry, guys, can I just say one more quote? The one where he came off the worst and the most tone deaf was, oh my, like they were like, what's it been like to watch these games? He goes, of course it's been tough. Like, I wish I could have been there to help the team. Dude, that was your choice. And again, like, fair enough if that's, like, again, I'm not even talking about the merit of the choice, but you can't ask to sit out and then go, oh my God, I'm dying to be there. I wish I could be there. Dude, you could snap your fingers and make that happen. Like, why are you saying it like that, man? Like, that's what you got to dance around that question a little better. Like, I didn't love how that sounded. Because it's like, no, I want to be there only on my terms. It's like, oh, yeah, I wish I was there. Yeah, you could.
Right. It's like when you tell a buddy, like, hey, I'm sorry I can't make your party this weekend. Then you find out that he was actually proposing that night. And afterwards, you're like, oh, I'm sorry I wasn't there. That's crazy. It's like, nah, man, you could have been there. Sorry.
If I had known it was going to be a big deal, I would have made the effort to come. I wasn't going to make the effort otherwise.
Right, exactly. You got to give me the full rundown before I commit to plans. It's 2025, baby.
I'll look out for the Google Doc just to see what we're going to be doing hour by hour.
Evite.
So I can figure out where to show up. Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. I mean, I don't think that this is his favorite part of being a professional athlete. And I don't think he would even, like, pretend. Right? He likes to play, doesn't love to talk about it, doesn't really engage with media a ton.
He chose to do this interview. There was no,
and make a documentary show about himself. So I think
he's
kind
of
of
sound like actually he asked for the interview. He was like, this is why I wanted to do this. And he was like, not to defend myself, but to just give some context. It's like, okay, man.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating thing. I thought it was interesting. He talked, they asked a couple times about what do you think about the former national team players? And he's like, I looked up to a lot of these people. I still do. I think that's tough. That's where on Tuesday, our show, what I said was like, I think it's kind of sad what Landon's doing because I think he could hold a special place. And I think you kind of hear that of like, this is a player who came up, like I said, as fans, we defended Landon and fought for like his space. And so I think you could tell there a little hurtful that it becomes a public comment and not a private conversation. And it's one of those where you're like, yeah, we're going to come on and yell stuff because we're not We don't talk to these people. If Landon thinks this is a problem, I would bet money Landon can find a way to get in a conversation with Christian Pulisic, one-on-one, text message, whatever it is. So I think that you could hear a little bit of that. Yeah. And I think you could hear a little bit of the disconnect that's happening all across things, which is 4 losses in a row. A first time trailing 4-0 against Switzerland at halftime in 40 years. The last coach to lose 3 in a row was Jurgen Klinsmann in 2015, and the last to lose 4 in a row was in 1986, a coach I've never heard of before.
Me neither.
So we're
glad I wasn't alone.
Yeah, we're into a different territory. We came on after the Turkey game and talked about some of the issues. I celebrated Max Harfston, which did not look great after Tuesday night, and what ended up happening.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Robin Williams, for all of that.
It's my fault.
Jeff, what did you make of sort of what you saw and what happened over the 2 games?
Yeah, I think it's all tied together, actually. Like, there's no... They look less prepared for the 2026 World Cup than they looked at the exact end of the 2022 World Cup. Like, entirely. Like, I think if you just hit fast forward 4 years and just had the exact same roster and just dropped them onto home soil, they would have been better prepared than they are right now. And part of that is a credit to Greg Berhalter, I have to say, who, yes, it looked like his message had gone stale in 2024. Yes, it looked like they needed a fresh voice. I think getting someone who had never worked in international soccer before was a huge mistake. I said it at the time. I wrote about it at The Athletic. I still maintain, I think this was not the right time to bring in someone who's never done this job before. But they have. And so now you get to a point where you look and it's disjointed. And players look like they've never played together before because they haven't. You have a coach who's bringing in players who, assuming that you have 40 players in decent health, would not be considered for a World Cup squad, who are playing in the last competitive window, feasibly, of this cycle. You have communication issues. You have players who look incredibly unconfident. You have a lot of players who are used to being kind of cogs and machines of positional play models who aren't used to trying to take over games themselves. And I don't think that you can remove this, by the way, from all the off-field stuff, because right now you've got very public spats, the likes of which we haven't really seen a ton of aside from, Raina Berhalter 2023. Like, usually these things are kind of sorted out behind closed doors with this program. And part of it is, granted, like, podcasts has really blown up over the last few years, right? And, like, I'm a proponent of it. This is very navel-gazing of me. Like, I told David, like, being on Soccer Wise was one of the highlights of my career, so we're just going to say that that's canon now. I am once a week, I hop on the Total Soccer Show, right? And I talk MLS every Tuesday. Like, I love podcasting. But if your way to have these conversations is podcasts and not meetings, if it's social media stories on Instagram, like, how can you possibly say this team is cohesive? Like, it just, like, the whole thing looks like an absolute mess. And frankly, it's embarrassing, I would say, that in a year, this team is going to be ready to host a World Cup.
And tell your dad to stop doing social media.
Every player on this team, tell your dad to stop.
It's never, there's nothing good that's ever going to come out of it. Unless it's like the wholesome, like, so proud of my son. Here's a picture of me and him.
Yeah.
And here's our family.
Stay out of it, man. Right.
Don't like, again, and like, parents,
You get
we should
one
call
wholesome
Weeby.
tweet,
We should
you
call
get an
Weeby.
irrelevant local sports team tweet, and that's your limit on the week.
Exactly.
We couldn't imagine being a father like Weeby.
Yeah.
Like, and just all the passion, emotion, and love that comes through it. Like, so I understand, like, the anger. I would say, like,
Totally.
like,
Totally.
just, but like, have that with your
have a
friends
group
and
chat,
with your
man.
family. Yeah, that's a private thing.
Yeah. Group chats are healthy, right?
Nice. But I think it's interesting that you talk about it, like, the depth of the player pool and how deep you can go in a year or year and a half, whatever time you have, to have swapped 9 players out, I think it was, from the Turkey game to the Switzerland game. You just don't have that option right now, even if you want it. One of the things that highlights this now is the U.S. is doing what a team does going into a World Cup, which is organize friendlies against really good teams because you have to be challenged and you're not in qualifying. Yeah. What just happened is what we've seen in the past in terms of the lineups and things that were put together going into 2009 and 2013, but those friendlies were not against Switzerland and Turkey. And so I think the whole thing got highlighted on Tuesday night because you're kind of doing 3 different things at the same time. And the Swiss players were like, oh, okay, cool. Like, awesome. We're playing against a rotated team that doesn't really know each other, and they're going to play super narrow and give us a bunch of space and not really pressure us. Like, then this is what we're going to do, where normally that game's like against Grenada or against Finland or whatever it ends up being, and it probably ends up being a 1-1, 2-2 game.
And do you learn? And to be fair, like if I'm playing devil's advocate here, do you learn more from that 2-2 against Finland than you could against after a 4-0 against Switzerland? Like Pochettino probably learned more about how he needs to calibrate his team shape in terms of allowing those spaces, in terms of usable width versus like dead space, whatever. Because again, this is something to go back to 2022, right? Like when you think about USA versus England, right? The whole thing was about the wide spaces and about shifting the thing off balance so England didn't know how to move forward. There are good ways that you can do that. It doesn't look like he's doing any of them. And it also just, again, goes back to club managers are used to having more curation ability with their job. They're used to being able to work with these guys every day, to get in their ear and say, hey, you need to be more selfless with this. You need to make this off-ball run or whatever, and then it'll pay off. 1 out of 50 times you'll get the ball, but the other 49 you'll create space for someone else, right? He can't do that. He can't do that right now. And it just looks like a team that has less identity than it used to. It looks like a team that has less cohesion. And frankly, it is also a team that has less depth than it did 4 years ago, seemingly. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's worrying. Like, I don't think it's necessarily like you can't go back and like relitigate like hirings and changes and all that sort of stuff. Really, it's not productive, but it's hard to see how this window is setting them up better for 2026 in totality.
It will be fascinating to see what the group looks like on Sunday against Trinidad and Tobago to open up Gold Cup, because even with the halftime subs, and so you start to see people, it will be interesting to see who Pochettino came out of Tuesday saying, okay, I trust this character, whether it was comments made in the locker room, whether it was effort, whether it was ability to sort of like play through it, and then other players who sort of struggled through that whole moment. And my guess is, like you said, like that outside of the tactical stuff they learned, that's what they're going to take from this game, is going to be like, who could we trust with their backs against the wall? And you got a year left. I talked to someone yesterday, which was fascinating, and they were saying, like, remember that England, like, Greg Berhalter spent 3 years saying we're going to change the way the world perceives American soccer and change the way we play. And then you get into the biggest games and it's 4-4-2 and close the game down.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know that Pochettino has the time to even build the other thing.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
So, like, why not just lean into the thing immediately and accept the fact that, like, okay, it's not going to be perfect. You've got a home World Cup. You're going to have the crowd behind you. You're going to have the atmosphere behind you. As we have learned from a ton of research, you're going to get the referees on your side, because that's like a large part of home field advantage we have learned is referees are affected by the atmospheres. You have all of that. Can you close the margins down on the game? And like, it may not be the event you expected 9 years ago when you bid for the thing, or 15 years ago when you bid for the thing, but it may be your best case scenario at this point. And we're going to learn a bit at the Gold Cup. Not sure. I don't know the last time we had.
What will we learn? Good, bad, or indifferent?
I think that it is going to affect the way things are done going forward based off the results.
Mm-hmm. So is Max Arsene going to be on the World Cup squad? Like that's kind of, this is my point. It's just like, what are we going to learn with what? Like the Gold Cup roster? Will there be 2 players who start the opening game at the World Cup? Sorry, the Gold. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
If Rudy Camacho is willing to take the dual switch, you can really set up a backline around Max Arsene. Obviously, Mo Farsi wouldn't, because he would never. But you could start to piece it together, and potentially have something that you can lean on. Now, it's going to be, obviously something we're going to be talking about a lot. And it is right now a fascinating story, I guess you could say. A depressing story, I guess you could say. Choose the word.
Say that.
I guess.
I would say my Canadian chats are having one experience separate from my USMNT chats. And maybe we'll have to have Jesse Marsh on at some point to talk about all of this and see what we can learn from it. But let's move to much rosier and more positive and straightforward things to discuss. And let's talk about the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup, the first ever 32-team Club World Cup. It's coming to the United States. It's across mainly the East Coast, a little dabble into what I would call the Midwest, and other people wouldn't. I'm sure Jeff has a ton to say about that. But we have this tournament coming up, and the opener is on Saturday. So Miami is opening against Al Ahly here in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. Move over, Tyreek Hill, because these are the superstars of Al Ahly ready to take the field and take over. Although it was Shakira most recently, sold out Hard Rock, I think back-to-back nights, record attendances.
Shakira bigger than Club World Cup. We've always said so.
I think we have always said that. Although J Balvin's going to be involved with the Club World Cup, so we've got that going for us. It is a group in Group A. So there's 3 MLS teams playing in Group A, Group B, and Group D. 32-team tournament, so that goes all the way to G. Is that the right letters? H?
It sounds right. Yeah,
Okay, cool. I'm going to stick with that.
H.
Miami plays against Al Ahly. They play FC Porto, of course, from Portugal, and they play Palmeiras in their final game. They will play their second game in Atlanta against Porto, even though they're like kind of a home team in this whole thing. Yeah. Jeff, you love the Club World Cup. It's all you talk about.
Everything off the field, too.
I wanted to have you on to not talk about it, and you were like, no, I have to talk about this.
That's slander.
Let's go big picture here before we dig into it. What do you make of like what this whole thing's going to be and what's going on?
I think that this is like a grand experiment by FIFA to see how infallible they can be with their business decisions in their organization. And like I think that that sort of like FIFA just makes choices and we all have to live with it has been cracked a little bit among certain soccer fans. I think as simply as like their split with EA Sports, where it was just like, okay, you're going to try to make your own video game when you know nothing about programming because you're FIFA, right? And so then that kind of starts to show like a different sort of recognition of its place within the landscape, right? And you get to this Club World Cup and it's bloated. I think we can say, I don't think that there's a viable reason that you have Juventus and Salzburg here as the 8th and 9th best non-winners of the Champions League from Europe. Like, that's just a farce. To say nothing of giving Inter Miami a path in from the Supporter Shield. To say nothing of
after
all
they
these
won
things.
the Supporter Shield.
Right,
After
exactly.
They won the
Hey, everyone knows they're Supporter Shield truthers deep in the Zurich offices. Everyone's been talking about that for years.
Yeah, they're big. They're big into that.
Matt Doyle has been working on that for a while.
Could you imagine if we were sending the LA Galaxy in this state, though?
I wish we were. Honestly, because that's the entertainment factor of it all, right? And like now, look, you've got the situation here where they will play these games. And on the one hand, you see LAFC after the playoff against Club America really celebrating, looking like this was like something that they had really aspired to get into. And then they joined the Seattle Sounders in protesting the payment structure for players as negotiated in the last CBA when talks were held well before this tournament was ever concocted in its true and current form, right? So it's a mess from a lot of different angles, just domestically, to say nothing about ongoing protests in a lot of host cities due to ICE raids, to say nothing about fan safety in the
And that
face
they're
of
working
those ICE
security
raids.
for some reason. Why?
Yeah.
No idea.
idea.
Fans have to bring papers to define their legal status to a soccer game.
Yeah.
In the United States of America, and there's just so much going on that that's like just an addendum on our conversation.
I got we were just in a meeting talking about like what to do with the athletics writers and editors, and we were told to write in Sharpie before we go to games, like the SOS hotline for journalists if we're detained, right? Like, that's what we're in for. Hype. Get excited, guys. This is Johnny's dream. And it's not a good look to see Johnny be the one who has to be banging the drum. You know, he's spent a lot of time going to these cities and parading this around, and it's frankly pretty sad to watch in like a The Office cringe comedy sort of way, where it's just like this guy really wants to make this a thing, and he's really putting his all into it. What I will say, though, is I think that it'll be easier to just watch soccer once the games start. Because
Totally
I think
agree,
that you will get into like, oh, Benfica and Boca Juniors. Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
Like, when else will they play a meaningful game? That's really cool, right? Like, there are some matchups. Seattle Sounders and Botafogo. I'm really excited to see how that one comes together, right? So there are games that I think will be interesting, but I don't think that being entertained even like sideswipes that sort of widespread cynicism and skepticism about this tournament existing at all.
We talked about the protests from the players on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. The game's coming up in 2 days. We don't have an update, right?
No.
Cool.
Well, ask Tom, yeah.
Cool.
I don't know why you're looking at me on that one.
No, there's nothing on mine. And again, dude, this is even a microcosm of what we were just saying. we genuinely brought Jeff on to talk about the games.
Yeah, right.
Not everything.
This was not the point.
And then like we derailed it. Like it's because it's hard to talk about it. And again, Jeff, like I completely agree with you. Like I have my critiques. I have my uncomfortable feelings about this tournament. But like you said, like when the ball starts rolling, like I'm not gonna be a hypocrite and pretend like I'm not. I'm gonna be watching the games. Probably, right? Like yeah. So like it's not all bad. It's far from good, but it's not all bad.
Right. And that's basically the only path where this can be a success is if the games are good, if it's safe, and you don't have like off-field things, even like the Copa America final, right? Like last year. If you don't have an incident like that, or you don't have an ICE detention raid, all these sorts of things, that's good. That's a success. That's all you can really hope for. Something to build off of.
I mean, if you set the bar there's a chance we could get a victory out of this one. Let's try and talk about the games for a moment.
Yeah.
Or not. That's also fine. I don't really care either way. So I mentioned it. We have questions in the chat, and most of them were like, what should be goals for these teams?
Sure.
So Miami's in Group A with Al Ahly, Porto, and Palmeiras. Seattle's in Group B with Botafogo, Atletico Madrid, and the European champions right now, PSG. And then LAFC, because of this play-in game, have been inserted into Group D against Chelsea. So they'll play Chelsea in Atlanta. They'll play Esperance de Tunis in Nashville. And then they will finish with Flamengo in Orlando, I believe at Camping World Stadium, which will be 68,000 Flamengo fans and 75 LAFC family members in the crowd for that one. So do you have an overall feeling as you've been doing this, and you're doing this with journalists from all around the world who kind of aren't coming from this at an MLS angle? Is there any interest from them in the MLS teams? Is there any belief that like some of these have a shot, or that there should be expectations?
There's interest in Lionel Messi.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Which will not be a surprise to people who subscribe to The Athletic or have seen it from outside. No, I think that there's the Seattle Sounders are unfortunately being treated as the just happy to be there, the plucky sort of like you're from the host nation. I think it's not an insignificant factor that they will play at home, so they will be resting in home beds, they will be training at their own venue. The Sounders had nothing to do with ticket sales. I want to start with this. You're going to start to hear, especially Sunday with the Botafogo match, a lot about how empty Lumen Field looks and about them closing sections, moving fans from the 300 level so that they get in front of the TV camera so that it looks like it's a fuller stadium, all that sort of stuff, right? It's going to be one of the first games, maybe along with Inter Miami against Al Ahly, that are going to look like, why did they book these venues? And that's the question ultimately, is why did FIFA push teams that operate these out of operating ticket sales and these sort of things, activating their listservs, all this sort of stuff? And two, why did you put these in NFL stadiums when this is a new tournament and you could have sold out MLS venues and would have looked really cool to have these in like genuinely world-class stadiums that seat between 18 and 25, 30,000 people? They didn't do that. That's not the route they went, and that's the lesson that they'll probably learn from this tournament as well. But the Sounders look very much like a plucky underdog here, and they were handed a really, really tough draw. So I don't think it's unrealistic to think that third is probably the highest that they might finish in that group.
They've also since then been decimated by injuries.
Yeah.
So I do think they reached out to a few contractors in the New Jersey area and asked them if they'd seen any athletes in the area that could be available. I think that's where Tom's recruiting was coming in earlier today, was like, you an athlete? Because they're looking for center backs and center forwards.
I know a guy
to fly out to Seattle.
And that's entirely fair, to an extent, right? Like that's kind of where they're at this point. Like, it's still an MLS squad entering this sort of competition. You've got LAFC, obviously bringing in De Rosen as a kind of ringer from Club America, which feels like, I wonder if that was pre-agreed to. Each team was like, we have one player that we're going to take from your team if we win. Like, that would have been like a really cool.
Yeah.
I would have loved that meeting, like the draft of drafts.
The all-star team at the end of the season.
Right. Yeah. Like, who is Club America asking for from LAFC? I would love to know.
That's a great question.
I think it would have been Giroud.
I'm trying to think of the funniest name.
Right?
Igor Jesus.
And Kosi Tafari, get ready to learn
No,
Club
it
America,
would have been Giroud, because this is like you spend
Yeah.
some money on this player, but they're not a full-time player for you.
Right.
And what's the inverse of that for LAFC is Olivier Giroud.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah,
I still won't give up on this take. I still think he's going to come good.
Oh, that's fine. I don't care about that. I mean, maybe it would have helped. He would have gotten, 3 games in a Club World Cup playing for Club America.
Right. Yeah. Just to shake off the rust. I mean, like it'll be. I think that they'll have a tough time of it. I think Miami is the team that does have the best draw, but I don't think Palmeiras is just gonna like. I still think it's a very tough group for them. Right. Yeah. So I would, if I had to guess, I'm gonna say 0 teams will advance from the group in MLS. I think that you could see 1 or 2 finish third and give a good go of it and be competitive, like in contention until the final day, and then that third game kind of eliminates them. And I think that that's fine.
I think LAFC has the best chance.
Yeah.
Ahead of Miami.
No, I think Miami has the best chance. Miami has 2 home games in that.
True. I just think that LAFC set up
home.
better.
It's in Miami. It's not a,
what, like
locker.
Well, they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, we don't get to go to the Chase
Stadium
locker room.
It's just little things like the grass is different. They don't know the bounce of
fair.
it. They don't know all these sorts of things. The atmosphere isn't going to be as pink, right? Like all these sorts of things where I think it actually does matter that they're playing in an NFL stadium there.
Okay.
For me, like, Miami have a hard time defending in any real way against MLS teams. I think Palmeiras is going to rip them to shreds against the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think with LAFC and Miami, the question is going to be how wedded are they to playing their most famous players? Because if you are going to have LAFC play Giroud for 75 minutes, they look worse when he starts. If you have Jordi Alba starting at left back for Miami, they look a lot worse defensively when he starts. And if you've got to play them for marketing considerations, to get people to watch your games, whatever the case is, and it hampers your ability to compete, like, it seems like if there's ever a tournament where that trade-off's going to be made, it's probably the 2025.
Jeff sounds like a burner account that blames MLS and Sunil Gulati and Don Garber for when the national team does bad. That's what that sounded like.
If they didn't have the ghost of Johan Cruyff calling up MLS players every single game, this team could be competitive. I don't think that's a problem for LAFC, just the way they've operated over the last year or two. Like, it doesn't seem like it. I think the problem for them is how do you manage the games? Like, what's the group against Chelsea acknowledging that the odds are you're getting a result against Esperance game 2, and how do you manage who actually is your best 11 in that group and how you use them? In the context also of, like, you didn't plan for this. So in the, like, load management across a season, and, like, it's not insane that, okay, they've added 3 games, they're not playing MLS games now, like, whatever. But, like, I think that part will be a little bit more complicated for them. Although I do, to your point, agree that, like, and I don't know who made this point, so I just said your point.
Yeah, that's good.
That they are set.
We co-bylined a lot of things together.
Yeah, we did. We shared a ton.
They are set up to play against the ball. They are a knockout team. Like, this is where they're at their best, and I think they've shown that they will put everything into anything that they are participating in. Right, Leagues Cup,
everything in
CONCACAF Champions Cup, U.S. Open Cup. Like, they have pushed really far in all of these because for all of the, like, which ones do we value? It feels like LAFC the 2 days before and into a game locks in, plays their way, knows how to set things up, and, like, has match winners that they can sort of lean on. Where then the flip side, though, is Miami has probably a winnable game in there as well. You'd assume, plus a little bit more home field advantage, and maybe a little bit of, like, shock factor, where, like, LAFC, no one's going to be intimidated stepping on the field against them. Maybe you get a little bit of that from Inter Miami, but I think
that
it's
could
very
work for
little.
LAFC, right? Especially if you have Denny Bouanga. And he'll be fired up for it. He'll be ready to go. And he doesn't have Carlos Vela to try to share passes to in transition, so that's going to make it look a little better.
Let me ask this.
They should have signed Vela for this tournament.
They should have. Honestly, they should have. Yeah, ceremonial first kick, Diana Ross.
I can't believe I didn't have this take a month ago. Where have I been?
Honestly.
Tom, explain to me a little bit this move. Like, they're brought in.
Ask me to explain Toonies.
No, they brought in on loan a player, but it only goes up until the transfer window?
Yeah, so the loan for Javier Dilrosun from Club America is through July 24th. July 24th is when the primary transfer window opens for MLS. And a bit of housekeeping, he's listed as a designated player, which is taking the spot from Cengiz Under, who was recalled by Fenerbahce. I'm sure the discussions between both. His loan was supposed to end June 30th, and like a week ago, when it didn't know if this signing was going to get done or not, they were like, as far as we know, he's here until June 30th. So he goes back early. That opens the spot for Dilrosun. He's somebody that the team likes, and you look at his profile. He's played for Feyenoord. He's played for Hertha Berlin. He's played for a couple places. He got 1 cap with the Dutch national team. He's 26. Club America signed him for $5 million. Like, this is the kind of profile that we would have been super excited about coming to MLS with his age range and some of that pedigree. So I don't know exactly where this is going to end with, but like if he comes and kills it, like why wouldn't they try to keep him? I know it's a super tight window for this poor guy to come in and be like playing for a DP contract in a month, and 2 of the games and the 3 games he'll get is at the Club World Cup. But this is a guy that they get to add some talent, and it's again just like the Che Gazunder deal. There is no risk in this. Worst case scenario is he doesn't give you anything. Well, that would have been the same as not signing a DP, and they still have all the flexibility. They will add a DP this summer. Maybe it's Dilrosun, but maybe not.
His profile looks like it'll also fit with Bouanga, which is necessary, right? And I think that they've had wingers who look a little bit contending for touches, especially in transition, that didn't quite work. But he is a good progressive carrier. He's good at passing in the final third, and he's better at distributing in the box or near the box than he is at taking his own shots. And so I think generally that could be complementary where, again, I think it could really unlock Bouanga. And I wouldn't be surprised if, at the end of the group stage, it's Bouanga who's like the best performing MLS player, even including Messi.
Yeah, I think he's made for this. I think they're going to be set up for that to happen. I think, like you said, he's going to be fired up to say, like, yeah, I can take a Chelsea player one-on-one in transition.
Yeah.
Like, I believe I can do that against anyone. And he's not wrong. At high speed, he can do that. Can he do it consistently in a Premier League season? I don't know. No, that's not the question here.
Right.
And I think that's going to be fascinating to watch. And that's sort of like this whole thing. I think the whole thing is like, what does Monterrey against River Plate look like? What does, Ulsan against a European team? It's just the biggest thing going for this right now is that there's this unknown that we've all debated in group chats and at bars and sitting around playing video games and watching games for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 70 years, whoever you are. That's like the one thing that is interesting about this that could pop out.
Yeah.
Do we have a specific game in all of that outside of the MLS teams that we are like circling and that we're locked in for?
From the day of the draw, I've been really looking forward to Benfica Boca Juniors. And then the last 6 months happened, and I am even more excited about that game because they are compatibly flawed. Like, Benfica just looked really
That's good.
out of ideas in the final third as they progressed in Europe in the knockouts. And then, Portugal is always a different story for them. But they really did struggle continentally figuring out what they wanted to do when Angel Di Maria wasn't pulling the strings. And this is his last tournament. This is his send-off before he goes back to Rosario Central to end his career, probably. Like, his boyhood club, really cool moment.
He doesn't want to coach Inter Miami too?
There's still time. Give it a year. Give it a year. Do the Suarez approach. Spend a year in South America and then go. So, there could be some lovely moments there. Boca Juniors, their defense is, they struggle a lot, but also their attack in transition can be pretty lethal. They have a couple of really good string pullers. Cavani still gets in good areas, even if he's a bit slower to get there. And, Benfica's defense is very good, and they can play a pretty aggressive high line, depending on the matchup. So there could be a
Winder
chance.
season?
For an 89th minute. That's been like a really funny part to me, by the way, is a lot of these clubs, especially from Europe, like finding like a 17-year-old American in their academy just to be like, here.
Put him on the billboard.
Oh, promotional
love him.
photos? Yeah. We've got Cooper's coming up soon. He'll be up in a minute to take the photos.
Yeah, it's just it's wonderful. But yeah, that's the game for me. Like Benfica Boca Juniors is exactly what you've been talking about. Like how good is Argentina compared to Portugal? Let's see it.
And some of those games are fun because as much as we have the summer friendlies now, we haven't seen like River and Boca don't come a ton. These Brazilian teams will come to Florida for a week in January. And
Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Hit them all, grab some blue jeans, play a friendly in Orlando, and then go back. But to me, those are the ones that are like fascinating. I think Group E, Inter, Milan, Monterrey, River Plate, and UAR Reds. Monterrey is... This is one of those moments where I've been telling people for 15 years, like, Liga MX is a great league, and you should watch it, and it's worthwhile, and the level's really high, and so it will be fascinating to watch them. You haven't had Mexican teams in Copa Libertadores since 2013, when Tigres went to the final against River Plate, so it's kind of like a nice little bookend to that, and every year we rumor that it's going to happen again. And then I think just to watch, like, Fluminense against Dortmund, where it's like, in soccer,
noon at MetLife Stadium.
I know. The timing of some of these kickoffs is just like...
One of my friends was like, yo, do you want to go? And I was just like, I don't know. Like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, we'd have to leave at like 9. I was like, I'm not tailgating for 10 hours. Because no, the game's at 12. It's
It
like,
kind of
what?
feels. Remember when MLS?
What are you
back in
talking
that
about? It's
9 a.m.
June.
kickoff window. Right,
I
where
think-
playing in Florida in June.
Oh my God, yeah, dude, the Jose Martinez special.
Yeah, it's like that, but the difference is MLS needed to play those games in that time to fit the tournament.
Yeah, yeah.
There is no reason for that to be the case with this club.
No, there is.
Crowd's
I
gonna
read
be
it on-
electric.
The whole reasoning is on The Athletic, every group, there's time kickoff, and it's in ET and BST, because obviously all of us operate in Greenwich Mean Time, and that's the whole
Yes, we
world
do.
revolves
Yes, we
around
do.
that 12 million person country, or whatever it is. So that's the reason. That's the reason
Is
for
there
it, and
four
that's why it
countries
has
in this one country.
That's why it has to happen that way. But like in the whole conversation of soccer is a best player on the field wins, tactics win, weak link game. I think people are going to learn a lot about the fact that there aren't a lot of weak links in the teams coming, especially from Brazil. And that's a really high level to start at, where it's like, what form are we in at our point of the season versus you being exhausted, and who do we bring and how much does it mean to us? And the physicality, I think, is the part I'm most excited about, because we have said this a couple times. People have this image of Brazil as Joga Bonita, and then any person you meet, whoever plays there, is like, no, it is the most physical league on the planet, and I want to see all of that happen in person.
Yeah, amen.
Those are the teams I'm looking forward to.
We will continue to cover this at Soccer Wise or not. I don't really
I'm
know.
Ron Burgundy.
Yeah, I don't really. We didn't really have a plan around this. I don't really know exactly when all the games
just
are.
go vibes,
obviously,
Yeah.
yeah, obviously I know when Inter Miami's playing. I guess with the noon kickoffs, we'll just be going live. Maybe we'll do some watch-alongs. Maybe that will be the vibes for the Club World Cup. The one game I would love to be at, which I won't be at because I didn't plan any of this, is Chelsea, Flamengo, in Philadelphia. I love soccer. We talked about this, Tom, before the show last week. The Link is an awesome place to go watch sports. There's public transportation. There's tailgating space around. There's a bar on the premises. The sightlines are okay for soccer. The feel makes it feel big. I think Flamengo is going to be one of those that's going to have 40,000 fans at their games because they don't come that often and their fan base is huge and they have big populations in the U.S. Plus, I think Chelsea sells decently as well. So I think that's going to be one that's really, really fun. And if I had planned any part of my life earlier than 2 days in advance, potentially I would have found a way to be there. But that's not how I
wonder
roll.
if there will be a protest of indignant Pennsylvanians about how they treated Christian Pulisic. I hope they do. I hope they protest Chelsea. That's what I want.
Jeff putting it out in the world so anyone can think of it
Inciting violence.
for the first time ever. We're going to talk about MLS for a little bit here.
Meaningless violence.
Yeah. We have a full slate of games this week, except for the fact that 3 teams are playing in Club World Cup, so they cannot play anyone else. We have a Thursday night game, as I said, NYCFC Atlanta. Portland plays San Jose. That is 10:30 p.m. Eastern time on Friday night, so a nice little way to start your weekend. Tom, you broke some news around the Portland Timbers, a tough one with Jonathan Rodriguez, who's been unavailable most of the year, has come back, and now it sounds like might be back out.
Yeah, Jonathan Rodriguez is almost definitely out for the season. The only reason I have to say almost is that if the player, the surgery is planned, if he decides, I don't think this is the right course for me, then they'll have to readjust. But it's like 99.9% that he's out for the rest of the season. And if he does get surgery, they will put him on the season-ending injured list, and that will open up a DP spot. And their plan is to then sign another attacking DP. They're looking at, or maybe not necessarily attacking, but they're definitely looking to add to this group. They're looking at the first half of the season, which was very strong for them, in a wide-open Western Conference, and a team that, if you remember the first week, Santi Moreno wasn't playing, David DaCosta wasn't playing, Kevin Kelsey, it was like Kevin Kelsey and Felipe Mora, like the only 2 attacking players they had fit and available to play. And so this is a team that got a little bit of a late start. They think that they've been solid, and they think that there's upside and that they have as good a chance as anybody with the right moves this summer that they can move up the Western Conference. They would like to add a center back as well. So Portland Timbers are going to be one of the teams I'm watching in the summer transfer window, which again opens on July 24th.
They're talking to the contractors in New Jersey as well about potential athletes in the area. Let me ask this, though. If they are going to make a move, you assume it's attacking player.
I'd assume it's a winger. I'd assume.
Do you think that was my whole question? Because Jonathan Rodriguez was signed as a winger, and he's played very well there. It is not his natural position. It's something they made work, but not necessarily. So you're saying you trust Felipe Mora and Kevin Kelsey?
Yeah.
Okay.
for the two of them to have all of the minutes at center forward.
Because the flip side is you say you trust Santi Moreno and Anthony.
I would agree. Yeah, but like, listen, man, Anthony's been shredding it. There seems to be rumors about Santi Moreno every 6 months.
Yeah.
So I think part of that is the plan. And like, while it is statistically true that without Jonah and obviously without Evander, that they've lost, I think, 60% of their goals, something in that region from last year. This team, it wasn't like-for-like replacements, and it won't be a like-for-like replacement for Jonathan Rodriguez. Like, David Acosta, it's a very good player. He's not what Evander is. He does more kind of against the ball. He makes them, less predictable. And like that, like Evander's an MVP candidate. Like, this is not a critique of Evander at all. It's just that, yes, this team is losing a lot of goals from last year, but they are playing completely differently. And this is something that could work for this group, and it has worked this season. Finn Sermon's been really good in defense. Again, they want to add another center back. This is a team that is just not at all like what they were last year.
Jeff, would you be the same boat?
I'm telling you, man, one of these years, Lucas Milano is going to break out.
Miami FC, isn't he?
Yeah, he's back in the States. It's crazy.
He thought that they were playing in the Club World Cup, so he signed there. He'll be at Pitbull Stadium on Saturday waiting to kick off.
Full kit, ready, holding his cleats. Yeah, I think, look, the Western Conference still just has, like, a lot of space to, like, walk into at the top of the table. Like, you've got 3 teams that I think have pretty clearly established themselves in that upper echelon right now. Like, you've got Vancouver, yes, a little bit of a skid, yes, teams have started to figure out how to play against them, but, like, once they get their guts back and once they, are able to kind of get back on track and focus on their competitions, I still think they're going to be the favorite to win the Western Conference, certainly in the regular season. Minnesota United, San Diego, they play each other for the first time this weekend. I think that'll be really telling. Minnesota at home, so they will cede a lot of possession, which is going to suit San Diego, but also then if they give too much of it and they advance their line too far, that also suits Minnesota, so that'll be a really interesting little chess match, like a couple of really good matches. But when you look at Portland, like, there is still a lot of space in this conference right now to walk into, and I think that I've had my sort of skepticism about their high level potential. I mean, Tom mentioned it. You take Evander off of a team, and then just sort of that game breaker, that sort of player who can just take.
Also noted off of a team that finished 8th last year.
Yeah, which we know exactly. But then that's where you look and you say, okay, is the squad around him, going to be better? And I think that they've improved the squad, but I do agree that they've kind of weakened the headliner on the squad. Yeah. And so, if they can bring in a winger who is going to be less predictable, someone who can make a, like a Gabriel Peck 2024 impact or, whatever the case may be, I think that that's going to obviously help any team, right? But I think especially for a team like Portland, I think that could help them get past like LAFC and Seattle and some of these other teams that are sort of in the upper middle right now of the table, and we all feel like they've been underperforming, and once they get to the other side of Club World Cup, we'll kind of flip the switch and then they'll get in the top 4 places, but it's still very much there for Portland.
I think I agree with both of you of like I would go for that wide attacking player to take some more, to have a spark different than David DaCosta, because that's not, I think year one, naturally, he's not going to change the game for you as often, but I wonder if the easier move to say like, well, we're only going to have them for, 15 games, 12 games, whatever it ends up being, because, I think it's an 8 game opening round of the playoffs now. So it'll be the last 8 games of the regular season than that. I think if that's what you're going to do, I don't know if a center forward's easier. The other thing is, and it's in the chat about a different team, but like Yakumakis is rumored. Like, do you just start higher up with a move like this by bringing a guy like that in and say, well, we have, we get a little bit better at center forward. We think we're already dangerous at the wide places. A player like that makes Santi Moreno better, makes David DaCosta better, and is that the improvement for you? But I think in general, it may all make sense for Portland, and they really haven't had Rodriguez this year. So like all of this is kind of going to be a bonus.
Exactly.
It's all going to be a bonus on what it's been this season. But we've also on the flip side seen like Under, where it's like maybe it's not so easy to just like throw a player in and have them be super effective and be influential immediately.
Right.
Unfortunately for them, they couldn't get a guest player spot for the Club World Cup. You kind of went over it there. Jeff, are you going to be in the Minnesota game?
I will be in Seattle, actually, for Club World Cup this week.
Oh, of course. You got to be at the big games and the big NFL stadiums because it's all you want to talk about. It's even on the bottom line right now, even though we moved on. Because you told me...
It all hurts.
Yeah. You told me that it's all you wanted to talk about. What do you make of Minnesota right now? What do you make of San Diego and like how those two teams look in general and then going up against each other?
Yeah, I think that, with San Diego, they've I've been really impressed just like usually with an expansion team, it's a lack of depth. And at this point of the season, as you get close to midway, you start to see that. And then, the wheels start to fall off with one injury or one suspension or whatever the case may be. You have to make one rotation for a Wednesday and suddenly the whole thing falls apart. And they haven't been like immune to bad performances, but they have been very good at snapping out of them and not turning them into a tailspin, which is usually an issue with expansion teams. So I still think that, they've got a very stable game model. They've got Anders Dreyer performing at an MVP level. They've got Chucky Lozano looking much more switched on since probably about the start of April. So like they've got the players who can decide games for them, which will be really helpful in the playoffs. Minnesota right now, so it's interesting because right now their model is we're going to go over you or we're going to go around you, but we know we can't go through you because they do not have those sorts of midfielders. They have string pullers who can break lines. They have, if Robin Lod plays withdrawn, he can do that. They've been playing him more advanced, which I think is smart because he is, at the end of the day, still one of the club's best first touch finisher outside of the strikers that they have. So it's good to get another player like that who can open that up when Yeboah and Olorosei are marked adequately. Joaquin Pereira has looked a lot better. I think that expectations sort of shifted now for him to recalibrate to actually accept the kind of player he is, which is that he's much more of that, actual like deeper in midfield, wants to get on the ball earlier and then play that pass rather than be an Emmanuel Reynoso where he is going to only be on the ball and then play every pass. So I think that helps their game model a lot, but you see it in the possession. You see that they don't have that player who can be that epicenter right now, and they don't have that defensive midfielder who can stop teams on the break in the middle, which held them back last year in the playoffs against the Galaxy. So if they can get that midfielder this window, I think that they genuinely vault into the, if not tier 1B of MLS Cup contenders, because they have the attackers, they have the defensive identity. Dane St. Clair's looked switched on more than past years. He's looked really, really, really good this year. Michael Boxall is ageless at this point, one of the best center backs in the league this year. So they've got the bones for it.
Canadian Shield veteran, but not winner, Michael Boxall.
That's right. That's right. Jesse Marsh winning an unbalanced Shield? I'll never hear it.
Yeah.
No chance. Yeah. But no, it's I think for Minnesota, this is probably the best they've looked as a whole week to week to week since they moved to Major League Soccer. The question now is, do they have that sort of element of surprise, or do they have that sort of player who can wrestle control of big games like they had in 2020 with Reynoso and Kevin Molino working off the side?
It's going to be a fun one. There are some big ones this weekend: Columbus, Vancouver, and Chicago, Nashville. Of course, it's an international break, so like half the players on these teams aren't there, which is the most MLS thing, is like to take two of the fun teams that play great soccer and then they play each other in like the worst possible moment. Tom, I know you wanted to do, I think it was about 20 minutes on RSL DC United, and then you wanted to do schedule change stuff. Was that what you had said?
I think I'm going to
talking about the Freddie Adu Nick Rimando trade, right?
Yeah, Tom has a full breakdown for us to go.
Good.
Lobbing Scorcher says Tom needs to go to Seattle with Jeff, or he's not a real grinder. I agree. Shout out to Noah or Ari, whoever is in there. You should follow Lobbing Scorchers. You should follow Sounder at Heart, because they're going to be covering all of what's going on out there, as well as The Athletic, which I believe is connected to a paper of record, but I can't remember which one right now, which is where Jeff works. Jeff, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here. Your first full Soccer-Wise debut, going into what is a big summer of soccer headline by Jeff's appearance on Soccer-Wise.
Exactly. Yeah, no, this is what it was all building to, and we're only in early June. Thanks for having me, guys. This was awesome.
Tom, I don't have anything to say to you.
That's okay. We've said too many nice things.
Yeah.
Happy 1 year anniversary, guys.
Yeah, happy 1 year anniversary.
I'll bring you roses later.
We had our NWSL show come out a little bit earlier today with Jordan Angeli, as well as talking a little bit about our top moments of the year. And of course, we'll continue to cover all these teams, all these games, and everything else going forward. So thank you to all of you for watching live. Thank you to all of you for listening. And we'll talk to you again very, very soon.